Much. In the meantime, oil prices are climbing on all of these cross currents. Our escalations with Iran getting us closer to a war. Sometimes people telegraph that as a sign of things to come. A former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense under President Bush 43, Peter Brookes. You have been arguing, Peter, that just because it rattles markets doesn't mean it's going to come to pass. The prospect of a war, in this case, in the Middle East, or particularly erupted violence between ourselves and the Iranians. What makes you say that?
Well, look, tensions are high, but I don't see that we're necessarily heading for a crisis that will lead to conflict. Iran is trying to get themselves out of the economic hammerlock we've put them in. They're really in a lot of pain. I mean, Neil, look, you're talking about inflation at 40%, unemployment at 15%. The rial, the Iranian currency, is down 60%. Iran is exporting as little oil as it did, as little as since the 1980s. So and half of the government income comes from energy. So they're in a hurt. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to appeal to the Europeans to not let them to get out of this nuclear agreement, which it looks like they're talking about doing. Now, we're not there yet. They're talking about 10 days until they exceed their stockpiles of low-enriched uranium. They're talking about, potentially other issues. So I think that the fact of the matter is that we're not necessarily at the point of war or conflict. Tensions are high, and they're likely to stay that way as Iran tries to get out of this economic hammerlock we've put them in.
You know, many of them, too, those countries in Europe and elsewhere, they still question a lot of the intelligence that we have that it seems to point to Iran unequivocally as being behind these tanker attacks. What do you make of that?
Well, look, I mean, it's since they don't have the information, perhaps we've not been able to share it with them. We know what's out in the public sphere. We don't know what our folks know behind those closed doors and intelligence circles. So perhaps that information hasn't gotten out there yet. There's possibilities of being skeptical. I'm not skeptical. I mean, who else would have done this? I mean, if you really want to go conspiratorial, you could say somebody is trying to push us towards war with Iran. Of course, the Iranians did not target an American warship. They've not targeted American troops yet. And so we haven't had that sort of thing. But yeah, people are going to be skeptical regardless. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know who else would have been involved in doing this and would have the motivations to do so.
Real quickly, I always wonder if Iran is behind a lot of this and not audacious, then someone's got their back, or they feel someone's got their back. What do you think?
Well, I mean, if I understand your question correctly, Neil, I mean, the fact is that Iran is a major power in that part of the world. They have significant influence in places like Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, then obviously in Yemen, and so they are.
Well, I'm upping it to further. I'm over to Russia, China. What do you think?
Well, Russia-Iranian relations, I think, right now are strained. And I think, China has to look at its relationship with the United States or its relationship with Iran. The same thing with Russia. So, I mean, nobody is, I would say, has their back completely. And that certainly includes Russia and China.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Very good catching up on this region. Peter Brookes.